In today's video, we have lots of NHL news and rumors around the league to discuss, including some trade talk around the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. Could Trevor Zegras end up with the Blackhawks? We'll discuss the latest rumors around those players. Plus, we'll discuss the fallout of Matt Coronato's agent sharing some unfavorable tweets on X, showing the displeasure in him being demoted to the minors. Plus, are Lamoriello and Patrick Waugh not on the same page? Is there anything kind of brewing there? Plus, the Stamkos Return to Tampa tonight. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, it's a big night of NHL hockey ahead of us here. Of course, before we get into the games, I want to take a quick look at the NHL waiver wire. Very quick note, yesterday the Lightning had Gabriel Forte on waivers. He would have been on waivers much sooner, but unfortunately was on a season-opening injured reserve. He, no surprise, did clear and has been since reassigned. As I mentioned, big night in Tampa tonight. Steven Stamkos comes home for the first time after being signed by the Nashville Predators as an unrestricted free agent this past summer. Of course, Stamkos was the first overall pick with the Lightning, had a heck of a run there, multiple Stanley Cups, long career, holds many team records, arguably the greatest or one of the greatest players ever in franchise history. It's going to be, kind of weird and surreal to see him in Tampa in a different uniform. Obviously, he's, him and his new team, the Nashville Predators, have had a bit of a slow start to the season, but have been kind of getting better here in recent games. So obviously going to probably be an emotional night for him. I'm sure they have a massive tribute planned. It's going to be emotional for the fan base, I am sure. But Stamkos is going to be the probably the big story that we see in the NHL this evening. Of course, lots of other injury and recall roster updates around the league. The Kraken today recalled John Hayden and Cale Fleury. The Ottawa Senators today signed Malcolm Subban to an AHL-only deal. Of course, after they had to recall Mads Søgaard when Linus Ullmark was out, he went back to the American Hockey League, immediately got injured. So their depth is a little bit thin. They do have some, a few young goalies that are good prospects in the system, but not enough to really fill an AHL team and an East Coast League team when everybody's healthy. So they're bringing Malcolm Subban for a little bit of veteran depth there at the minor league level. So that's an AHL only deal, so he's not eligible to be recalled to the NHL should they need to recall a goaltender. The Canucks are going to be getting back defenseman Derek Forbort. Of course, he's missed some time after the passing of his father. The Florida Panthers and head coach Paul Maurice also confirmed today that Captain Barkov will be back tonight as well. So, of course, they've already done pretty well without him, but after a scary incident earlier this year, he's back, and after not missing too much time, it looked like it could be serious, but they kind of dodged a bullet in that case. Washington recalled Mike Sgarbossa, who's an option to play fourth line center tonight. Essentially, they didn't want to necessarily have to take Connor McMichael off the wing, who's been playing wing on the line too. Obviously, naturally a centerman. Hendrix Lapierre has been struggling as well. So they didn't really want to have to disrupt too much. So they bring up Sgarbossa as an option to be a centerman. Of course, they officially moved Matt Roy to injured reserve today as well. But of course, he's been hurt since the season first got started. So they finally made that move official. The Carolina Hurricanes today recalled goalie Spencer Martin. Freddie Anderson is dealing with some sort of injury. Don't have a lot of details there on it just yet. Of course, the bigger news earlier today was the Toronto Maple Leafs extending defenseman Jake McCabe on a 5-year contract extension. There is a dedicated video on the channel already done earlier today with a little bit more details on the contract, but just to kind of summarize what went down. Of course, that we know the Leafs and McCabe had been talking for some time. There was some reports right around the end of the preseason, beginning of the NHL season, that they were close, and there was some thought that it could get done sooner than later. And here we are. So a 5-year deal, cap it's $4.51 million. They did go down the route that we saw the Canes and Seth Jarvis use with some deferred money. It's not a lot of deferred money, but I believe originally I thought it was only around $1 million, but based on what I've seen today, I think it could be closer to $4 or $5 million. Basically, it's $23 million over 5 years, but in years 2 and 3, there is money deferred to year 6, and I think between the two amounts, it adds up to around between $4 and $5 million, something like that. It's very much front loaded. Big signing bonuses in year 1. And then you kind of goes down as the years progress, and then there's also trade protection. He has a modified no trade through majority of it. I think the first year is a full no trade, and then it goes to a modified with 16 teams after that. So overall, we know Jake McCabe has been a pretty good fit there in Toronto. Of course, when they got him from Chicago, he had retained salary already, so they've had him pretty cheap. He was making around $4 million before, but the Leafs didn't have to count that much on their cap hit. So this would be a big jump for him for what they're paying him, but not a big jump really overall for you to look at what his actual salary was based on his last contract. So they now basically know during the entire Matthews contract, which obviously is the big one here on their team. Of course, they get some other big decisions to make, but during the Matthews era here that's going to run over the next 4 or 5 years, they've got Morgan Riley, Jake McCabe, Chris Tanev, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson locked up. So the top 4D, barring a trade, will remain consistent with those 4 guys. There's really only going to be room for your bottom pair to kind of rotate, assuming that everybody stays healthy and that, like I said, no trades that take place, which could happen. They all have some form of a trade protection in their contract, though, however, as well. So they'll both be there. All 4 of them will be locked up until they're, 3 of them, besides Tanev, he's signed till he's 41, so I don't know that he's going to make it that far, but the other 3 are signed till age 37. So that would be when the next contract would start, should they continue their playing careers beyond what they're signed for today. So let me know your thoughts on the McCabe contract extension down below. Of course, now we know the main decisions remaining with the Leafs will be in the forward group. I know with Matthew Nyes, there's been a lot of different reports on what he's looking for as an RFA. Of course, not quite as pressing where he is restricted. I've heard some reports saying that he wants a Slavkovsky contract, which is probably not something that the Leafs would want to do right now. And we'll see. I mean, he's definitely going to be earning a raise. There's definitely a player that they like and somebody who they would like to lock up on a longer-ish type deal, I'm sure. As far as the exact dollar figures go, it's hard to say. The biggest decisions, though, really is going to revolve around Marner and Tavares, of course, who are pending unrestricted free agents. I know Craig Berube's kind of been reluctant to elevate JT's role in it. And, of course, with Marner, it's kind of difficult to say what they do. I think a lot of their decisions are going to end up being based on how things go in the playoffs. I would be, if I'm Toronto, I'm probably not making a lot of long-term decisions just yet until we get to that point and see how things go. But that's just me. We'll see where things go from there. Of course, in Calgary, we saw yesterday, we talked about the fact that Matt Coronato, of course, unfortunately was demoted to the minor leagues after a strong performance and having a game where he popped in a couple of goals, and his agent shared some information on X, retweeted some, I guess you could say, some comments from fans saying that basically Anthony Mantha shouldn't be playing ahead of Coronato and he shouldn't be demoted to the minor leagues or whatever. And those tweets are now deleted. Elliot Friedman discussed this on his podcast today that came out this morning, saying he wonders if there could have been some pressure from the player to maybe delete that. Of course, sometimes, maybe the agent reacted without the player's permission and shared that information. I don't know. He also talked about the fact with his co-host Kyle Bukauskas that, that might not go over well in the Flames room. The team's off to a good start, and they're doing very well. And there is a fair bit of veterans around, and you got to wonder if the veterans on the team might not be too keen on, kind of seeing some whining and complaining from a youngster like him. And yes, as much as it sucks to go to the minors, it's sometimes it's more about your contract status than it is what's fair. And we've seen it all the time in a lot of different cases, a lot of teams over the years. Sometimes, you don't need waivers, you go down. Whereas somebody who does need waivers might not be playing as well as you, and it might not seem fair, but that seems to be the decision some teams go with. So hard to say what kind of reaction this is going to get in Calgary. I'm sure we probably won't hear a lot about it, but as Friedman mentions, he wonders if it might not go over well with the vets, and he wonders if it'll impact Coronato's opportunities here in the near future. Is this going to be something that they have to discuss internally, how things going to go? Of course, I had mentioned when the news first broke, I just wondered if it will have an effect on the long-term relationship to the team and the player, and will it lead to a change? I don't know. It's still very early and premature to say that he's going to be moved or anything like that, but just not a good look. And obviously, like what Freeman was saying, just I wonder if it'll really impact the team and the view of him, or if he's going to have to smooth anything over with his teammates. Time will tell. There's lots of discourse out there as well about Patrick Waugh and Lou Lamoriello with the Islanders maybe not being on the same page. I know Islanders fans, I think, are very frustrated. The lack of changeover and turnover with this team. It's starting to show in the attendance numbers as well in Long Island. They got a new arena. It's only been there for a couple of years, and the attendance numbers are already dipping because of the mediocrity and lack of results from the team. I think, like I said, it just seems like a very frustrated fan base, and the Islanders have a very loyal following. They have a good sized fan base that are very loyal. The arena is normally packed. One of the greatest fan bases around the NHL, really. But they're not afraid to let it be known when their frustrations are being felt, and here we are. And with Patrick Waugh being such a strong personality, and his comments, because he was asked yesterday, I think it was, about the recalls and the roster moves that Lou Lamoriello had made, just the way he made it sound, it just kind of, you get the feeling he didn't necessarily agree with it. He did clarify today. I've seen quotes posted from Stefan Rosner on X saying that essentially that he clarified his comments, saying if anybody thinks that he and Lou are not on the same page, that's false. He says they talk every day. He says Lou has final say what goes on upstairs. I have final say with what goes on the bench. They both care and just want to win. Also says that, he says, to be completely honest, the last couple spots in our forward group, they're not overly comfortable with what they've seen, and that they're not, sold on kind of giving a permanent spot, if you will, to any of the options that they've had, kind of rotating in and out of those options there. So obviously kind of shows that he's very frustrated with some of the play of his players, but kind of denied the fact that him and Lou are not on the same page. But I did see some reports. People claim that there has been some, butting of heads or whatever you want to call it behind the scenes. I don't know. When it comes to the Islanders of Lou Lamoriello, he's very secretive. You rarely get any leaks. And, I do wonder, though, with like I said, with a coach like Waugh, who's so fiery and so demanding, and obviously we know in the past he's liked to be very much involved, you got to wonder what he's thinking right now. So we'll be curious to follow that relationship just to see. Right now, based on what he said, there's nothing. But, will it always be the case? Or are they being honest? Time will tell. Now, on the trade front, I want to take a look at a variety of things. One, lots of talk again about Trevor Zegras. We've heard about a lot of teams that are looking for centers. And of course, as that information have come from NHL insiders over the past week, a lot of teams, a lot of reporters are suggesting, well, maybe Zegras could be a fit for one of these teams. And the latest intel suggests that, maybe Chicago is a great landing spot for Trevor Zegras. Clearly, they have tried to add more veteran help. They wanted to make their team more competitive this year. They definitely, I think understand that they're probably not going to be a playoff team yet, but they definitely want to take a step forward. And even listening to Connor Bedard speak after some of their losses recently, you could tell the frustration is there, and you could tell that they're not content with just having another bad season, racking up another high draft pick. That, they are there. They want to win. He does not like losing. The veterans they brought in, I'm sure, understand the situation they're in. They added more vets in the offseason. They should be a better team. And to be honest, I just think they haven't quite kind of hit the mark yet where they're able to win a little bit more frequently than last year. But at the end of the day, there's lots of talk that, and some more help at the center ice position would be a huge help for this club. And Trevor Zegras, of course, highly skilled player, can play center, and it could be a great compliment to Connor Bedard to have, as a second liner behind him. So certainly Zegras, we know, may not have a long-term future with the Anaheim Ducks. There's lots of talk around him over the past 6 to 8 months about how, he may not be the type of player that Pat Verbeek wants in Anaheim. They've accumulated a lot of other, bigger, stronger power forward types, and that, they haven't been completely pleased with Zegras' two-way game and, commitment to defense and commitment to just more than the offensive high-end skill. It's early. We don't know if Anaheim still is very much open to moving him, but to be honest, Chicago would make a lot of sense. We've heard about Montreal off and on over the last number of months. We know at some point that there were indeed trade conversations between the two sides and never materialized. Of course, his relationship with Cole Caulfield likely sparked a lot of that as well. They played a lot together before making it to the NHL, before getting drafted, before going to college. And, well, they could be, a duo once again. But Montreal does have a lot of other great options and has a much deeper core group of players that they're building around right now, more so than a team like the Blackhawks. And certainly, like I said, imagine Zegras as a complement to Connor Bedard could very well be a great fit. So we'll see. There's still no clear-cut definitive answer for sure if Zegras is going to be moved this year, although a lot of people seem to suspect it and think it's going to happen. And if it does, Chicago does make a whole lot of sense, in my opinion, as well. So we'll see where that goes. Now, some more talk around the Habs and the Leafs today from Elliotte Friedman and others as well. He mentions Montreal a bit on his podcast, where they talk a bit about because they're looking for a right shot defenseman and they're looking for a forward with edge. Now, on Montreal, Friedman talks about Matt Benning in San Jose maybe being an option on the blue line. He wonders, though, where he does have one extra year in his contract, if that's going to be a deterrent or not, or if they might prefer somebody in the final year, since they're dealing with a lot of injuries and if they have a lot of youngsters. They don't really want to bring in anybody that's necessarily going to have much term or necessarily be there on a long-term basis. Is more of a stopgap solution. Benning in San Jose very well could be one. We've mentioned Dante Fabro as well, and we will see where that goes. There's lots to talk about. He mentions again, too, today about a forward with edge. And I know another name that I've seen, he didn't bring up this name, but I've seen others bring it up, and it also makes a lot of sense. A lot of different reporters mentions Yanni Gourde in Seattle. Yanni Gourde is not a big guy, but he's one of the smaller players that does play with edge and bite. He was critical in Tampa's Stanley Cup victory. He was a huge part of that third line back when it was Gourde along with Blake Coleman. Like, they were a great duo there in line three. Good shutdown centerman. He can contribute offensively. He is obviously, I'm sure he'd be open to maybe even extending there, being a Quebec-born player. Don't know for sure, of course, but, a lot of players, especially in their later years, are very much nowadays, you see a lot of guys wanting to kind of go home. So it'd be a bit of a homecoming, or close as he's going to get to it as well. So, he's early 30s. I think he's 32 years old. He's a player that has a Stanley Cup to his name, lots of experience. Like I said, he's not huge, but he plays big, and he's a great defensive two-way player, which is something that they're missing. So to me, and he's, like I said, he's in the final year of his contract, and he would likely extend, I would think, probably for less money than he's making now. He's finishing up a 6-year contract over $5 million a year. So in all honesty, I really think Gourde might be a good player. It doesn't necessarily have to be this player with edge or bite that they're looking for. It doesn't have to be like a 6'6" fighter. That's not necessarily what they're looking for. I honestly think Marty St. Louis would prefer to have a player that has more skill and can play a more regular shift, but just, be a player that throws lots of hits, can play physical, kind of get in your face, just kind of be more like what Brendan Gallagher used to be. You don't really see a whole lot of that out of him nowadays, but in a lot of ways, Gourde can play a similar style. Like, he's a tough guy to play against. He's not big, but he plays big. So it could be a very interesting name for Montreal to watch. I expect the Kraken to be a team that probably does sell a few players off, especially pending UFAs this year. So it could be a good fit there. Lots of talk again around Toronto and Nick Robertson. And it's only one time, but he is going to be a healthy scratch tonight as the Leafs battle the Winnipeg Jets. He's only got one goal in the season as well, so it's probably fair to say that might be a little frustrated with his production or lack thereof. Head coach Craig Berube commented on the change in the lineup today, and the fact that he's not going to play tonight is because he says the Jets are a bigger team and he wants more size in there. And to be honest, I think he ran into that a lot under Sheldon Keefe as well. If he's not scoring, you need him to be able to do other things to contribute to the lineup. We hear hockey players say that all the time. If I'm, obviously I want to produce on the offense, but if I'm not, I got to be strong defensively. I got to block shots. I got to play physical. I got to do all these things. And those are not necessarily all things that Nick Robertson excels at. And of course, he's not a big body. He's a smaller guy. So, if the coach feels he needs a bigger lineup, he's certainly not going to be picking on Robertson to be in there. So, unfortunately, he will sit out tonight. I do wonder, will we hit a point here soon after, if this happens a few more times, where his name could be kind of, out there again as maybe being a piece that gets moved? He signed late in the offseason, went to training camp, had a slow start to the preseason, but then really caught fire and did really well since the regular season has started. Like I said, he's only got 1 goal, and he hasn't been getting it done. So, with him coming out of the lineup, you have to wonder how long it's going to be before this starts to creep up and wonder, could they make a move? There's also a lot of talk, and a new Athletic article from Jonas Seigel today saying how the Leafs really need a number 2 center. At the end of the day, Craig Berube has been reluctant and hesitant to put John Tavares in this role. He's played a lot on line 3, or a bit on the wing. And then, of course, you've got William Nylander, who had a brief experiment with it, didn't stick around, didn't work out. And Max Domi, who's had a chance to run with it, and again, hasn't worked out. Things are not working. The power play's been a bit of a mess so far. They've changed a new approach there and kind of split things up a little bit differently. And then, the 5-on-5, they need more secondary balanced scoring from both of their top 2 lines. Ideally more in top 3 lines even. But at the end of the day, some guys are just not getting it done just yet. So getting a number 2 center, maybe Nick Robertson could be a trade piece for that if he's not getting it done on the wing. They also have Timothy Liljegren, who's obviously been out there as a defenseman who's known to be available pretty much since the season started. A lot of people wonder about a guy like David Kampf, if he could be available. And then, of course, once he's ready to be activated, Calle Jarnkrok as well. So lots of interesting pieces there. But, could Robertson be the centerpiece for them landing a number 2 center? At this point, we don't have any connections as to who that number 2 player could be, who they could be targeting. But it does make sense based on what the article was suggesting that, if Nylander and Domi are going to have to play the wing, if they're not getting the job done at center, and Berube doesn't see Tavares as being that guy, they also mentioned that they don't see Fraser Minton being that guy when he comes back after his injury is healed up. That the only way that they're going to see them really addressing that position is through trade. With guys like Robertson and Liljegren maybe being available, you have to wonder if their futures in Toronto won't be more than short term until they can find that right player to target. So let me know if you think the Leafs should be targeting a number 2 center, and if so, who should it be? Obviously, I know we mentioned Trevor Zegras in Chicago. I'm not sure that Zegras would necessarily be the type of center in Toronto that Berube would want. So again, that's why that connection here has not really been made. But let me know who you think they should be targeting. Do you agree with the analysis on that front? And give me some mock trades so we can discuss further down in the comments. Of course, if you're new to the channel, you can make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.